Imagine waking up to screams, not from beasts, but from people, your rivals, charging through the trees with clubs, spears, and fire. Caveman battles weren't cinematic duels. They were nightmares, not for territory, for extinction. What really happened in prehistoric warfare will disturb you. Because this wasn't just violence, it was calculated, systematic, and drenched in blood. When most people picture cavemen fighting, they imagine crude brawls, grunting men swinging clubs. But archaeology tells a different story, a darker one of ambushes, of psychological warfare, of blood rituals and strategic mutilation. Because when resources were scarce and winter came early, there was no compromise. It was us or them. Before the first blow, there was sound. Tribes used drums, screams, and bone flutes to terrify their enemies. The noise wasn't music. It was psychological assault. Wails echoed through the valleys like banshees. Warriors painted in red ochre would howl like wolves, mimicking predators. Some even sharpened animal teeth and tied them around their necks to appear monstrous. And then they charged. But this charge wasn't reckless. It was choreographed chaos. Dozens sprinted in zigzags to disorient. Others circled wide to flank. Children rattled bones in rhythm, creating a haunting beat that echoed through the fog. Studies of bone flutes found in Geisenklosterle Cave show they could replicate bird calls and unnatural frequencies, tools of intimidation. Some tribes wore animal hides to look less human. Others carved symbols into their chests and smeared blood across their faces, not just to scare, but to sever identity. This was the first strike, and it came long before any weapon hit flesh. Because if fear entered the heart first, the battle was already won. Spears didn't just pierce, they shattered bone. In caves across France and Spain, skeletons show impact fractures in the ribs, skulls, and femurs, not from animals, from weapons. Blunt force trauma to the back of the head. Blades lodged between vertebrae, arrows snapped off in eye sockets. They didn't just kill, they erased. But it didn't end there. Some bodies were found with multiple fractures that were inflicted after death. Faces bashed in beyond recognition. Jawbones cracked, not by accident, but deliberately. To erase identity, to desecrate memory. Weapons recovered from these sites, sharpened flint blades, antler-tipped spears, stone maces, show advanced crafting designed for maximum internal damage. In some instances, the first strike wasn't fatal. It was meant to cripple. A shattered kneecap, a broken wrist, disabling the enemy so they could be finished up close. A strike to the belly, a stab under the ribs. Slow, intentional. The attackers wanted the dying to see what was coming next. Their village taken, their fire stolen, their name forgotten. This wasn't just war, it was memory assassination. Excavations at multiple sites, including Herxheim in Germany, revealed mass graves. Many of the bodies were decapitated. Others had arms removed, teeth pulled. Children, elders, infants, all thrown in pits. This wasn't chaos, it was ritualized. Some skulls were turned into drinking bowls, jaws removed, fingers severed. Why? To send a message. We don't just win, we unmake you. But the horror runs deeper. At Herxheim, bones were scraped clean. Not by scavengers, but by tools. Some archaeologists believe cannibalism wasn't for survival, but for domination. Eating the enemy meant consuming their spirit, owning their essence. In one grave pit, over 500 human remains were found, most butchered with the precision of livestock processing. Marks on the femurs suggest marrow was extracted. Skulls were carefully cracked, not shattered, implying purposeful retrieval of the brain. Teeth were sometimes arranged in patterns, femurs laid out like trophies. And it wasn't random. Chemical analysis reveals some of these people traveled from over 100 miles away. They were brought here, not just killed, but paraded, displayed, broken down. to erase their culture, their bloodline, and their gods. This wasn't a raid. It was extermination with ceremony. There is evidence some captives were kept alive, held for days, cut piece by piece, not for fun, for fear. Scars on bones suggest healed-over knife wounds followed by fatal trauma. That means they were wounded, left alive, then finished later. A warning to the next tribe. Run or die screaming. Some victims were bound, hands and feet, their joints twisted out of socket, not to kill, but to immobilize. They'd be dragged back to camp, humiliated in front of fires, spat on, beaten with sticks, starved, then parts removed. Fingers first, then ears, then eyes. Bones show cut marks around the joints, signs of controlled mutilation. No panic, no flailing, just methodical dismemberment. In some sites, tongues were cut out, a symbolic act of silencing. These captives weren't allowed to beg or scream or curse their killers. They were turned into shadows of themselves, broken, voiceless, dismantled. Some were forced to watch their families tortured before being killed themselves. And even then, death wasn't always the end. Their corpses might be displayed for days, strung on branches or speared into the ground, a warning beacon of what happens when you cross the wrong tribe. This wasn't just about winning. It was about never needing to fight again. They didn't always fight face to face. Some attacks happened at night, while families slept. The signs, half-cooked food, fire pits still warm, tools left mid-use, bodies piled at cave mouths. They waited for storms, fog, wind, then crept close with obsidian blades that could slice skin like glass. One silent cut across the throat, then another and another. Children were smothered before they could cry. Elders struck in their sleep. The lucky ones died without waking. Some attackers used smoke to flush victims out of caves, then slaughtered them as they stumbled into the open. Others set fires at both ends of a ravine, driving people into a kill zone. They used the terrain like a weapon. Cliffs, narrow passes, thorn thickets. Every feature was part of the trap. Footprints in the mud show organized formations, not a wild mob, but a coordinated team. They moved in silence, no shouting, no hesitation. They didn't come for a fair fight. They came to erase. And by morning, only ash remained. After the fight, the victors didn't celebrate. They sanitized. They smashed the enemy's tools, burned their shelters, buried their bones face down. In some cases, they ate parts of the fallen, not out of hunger, out of domination. And this wasn't done in haste. It was a ritual. Skulls were sometimes crushed and buried separately, fingers scattered in streams, spears broken and placed in fire pits. It was symbolic erasure, an ancient form of psychological warfare to make sure the defeated couldn't return, even in spirit. Survivors, if there were any, would return to find no trace of their people. No graves, no weapons, no home. Just silence. Some tribes even salted the earth or smeared feces into sacred spaces to desecrate the land and poison its memory. They turned the battlefield into a graveyard with no names. To win was not enough. They had to dominate past the last breath, erase the future, and rewrite the past. Because in prehistoric warfare, memory was the final weapon. And forgetting, that was the ultimate defeat. Gnaw marks on long bones match human teeth. Butchers left the hearts, took the livers, symbolic, strategic, disturbing. Some tribes trained children to throw stones from afar. Women carried spears in the rear line. Everyone participated, even dogs. Domesticated wolves were used as scouts and alarms. This wasn't a brawl, it was coordinated genocide. After victory, the dead were sometimes reassembled. Skulls painted, bones arranged in spirals. Not just memorials, warnings. This could be you. Some caves even contain what looks like theatrical reenactments. Skeletons posed, spears placed, expressions carved in bone. They wanted their enemies to feel death before it arrived. So, what really happened in caveman battles? Not clumsy brawls, but strategic, haunting, bloody warfare. They didn't just defeat, they erased. And the truth isn't buried in textbooks. It's carved into skulls, splattered across cave walls, and maybe, somewhere deep inside you, that instinct still lives. Because survival was never about mercy. It was about memory. And memory bleeds. If this story disturbed you, good. That means the truth landed. Hit like, subscribe, and comment. Would you survive the real caveman war? More stories like this coming soon. Because the past wasn't primitive, it was terrifying.